The Dog and Deuce Show is produced by Dymar Productions in association with Studio B Productions.
Welcome to Utah's longest-running sports podcast. This is Dog and Deuce. Every week, we're here to take a deep dive into the Utah Jazz, the Utes, the Cougars, the Aggies, and everything in between. On this episode, of course, we're talking Jazz basketball. Brian Preece from the Home Court Press podcast joins us to break down what we've seen so far and what we can expect in the second half of the season. Plus, Tiger Woods is recovering from that horrific car accident. Mike Conley gets screwed in the All-Star nod, and Donovan Mitchell is in the three-point contest. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming your way on Dog and Deuce number 358.
From Studio B in Salt Lake City, this is Dog and Deuce. Join the conversation at doganddeuce.com or send an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com.
Thank you for this episode 348 of the Dog and Deuce Show. If you want to know more, and I sure hope you do, follow along with the show notes at doganddeuce.com.
Watch the show all weekend long on your television set on K-Patter TV, or if you're in southern Utah, you can watch on Backcountry TV, or listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Send us an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com. I'm Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
This is episode 358. I think you said 348. You're shortchanging us, buddy.
Oh man, my bad.
Those 10 episodes are best. The last 10. Brian Preece from the Home Court Press podcast joined us a little bit earlier to talk some Utah Jazz basketball. That was a great conversation. Brian's an awesome guy. We're going to jump into that in a minute. But first, there's a hemorrhoid sighting.
Ding, ding.
So if you're new to this show, that probably sounds a little strange. One of our good friends, and we've had a lot of new listeners lately, a lot of people returning to the show who haven't listened for years and years. So we welcome everyone in, welcome everyone back. Thank you for joining us. But the Hemorrhoid is one of our good friends. His name is Nate. And where did the Hemorrhoid nickname originate? Is it because I think you told him you missed him like you miss a hemorrhoid.
That's exactly right. For the first about 5,000 messages, he only agreed with you.
That's true.
So I was getting a little frustrated, and I said, "Yeah, I miss you like I miss that hemorrhoid." And he liked it. And so, when it's an organic development only done out of love and appreciation for his commitment to listening and being a part of the show. So that, yeah. And I'm glad he's back. I've sort of missed my hemorrhoid over the last little while, and I'm glad for the return.
I've missed him too.
I wanted one so bad in my life.
Exactly. I missed him too. He takes a little umbrage. What, I don't know what the word is. I don't know why I went there, but he takes some exception to some stuff we said last week though. And I think I could be wrong. This could be mainly me. And this actually ties in pretty well with our conversation that we had with Brian that we're going to play in just a few minutes about what we're talking about and how far we think the Jazz can go and how specifically my fandom really comes into play here. And kind of it forces me to temper my expectations because I'm sick of getting my heart broken, essentially is what it comes down to. So here is Nate the Hemorrhoid. Real quick, if you want to leave us a voicemail or text line, easy way to do that. You can send us a text or on your cellular device, call us up at 801-477-7678. To make it a little bit easier, that is 801-47-SPORTS. Here's Nate the Hemorrhoid.
Hey, boys. It's your bestie, Nasty Nate the Hemorrhoid. So I know you've missed my voice and I've missed participating, so I'll just cut to the chase. I am a little disappointed in your reaction to the Jazz, and I know that as a fan base, we don't want to set up ourselves for failure, and I totally understand it. It's hard to jump on that train, but I, for one, am just preaching to the choir, obviously, that I think it's time that we accept that this team is legit, and I kind of feel like we need to stop making excuses for them.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I just want to clarify. I'm going to pause it right there, I should say. I don't think I was making excuses. I'm trying to settle down my expectations. And so I think what I was saying, if I'm not mistaken, is I'm kind of like, I'm forced at this point because my natural reaction is to be like, well, yeah, they're good, but this happened or they didn't perform against this team. And I'm at the point now where I'm really reaching to find those problem areas to help me temper my expectations. So I think that's what he's talking about.
Like, I get it. I don't want my heart to be broken as well. But we've got 2 All-Stars. We've got a really good coach. We've got experience, so we can't use that our team is young anymore. And we've got pretty good bench players. I don't know, probably 6-man, I would guess. You never know with what the league does. Jerry never even won Coach of the Year, so who knows? But, like,
it's travesty.
If you put this element, the exact same thing, in a bigger city like L.A., New York, Boston, everybody would be on board, and everybody would say, this is a championship team. Everyone else is just nothing. There's no more sense playing the season, in fact. And, like, I get it. It's just kind of the perception that we have as a small market team. But I really, really want to believe that our fan base thinks and knows that this team is legit. And
so I'm going to pause it there real quick. What do you think about that? Do you think that if the Jazz were in a bigger market playing this exact same way, do you think there'd be more attention or more admiration from the national media?
I mean, I think that's a valid point, and I think it's coming slowly yet surely. You know,
I agree. I actually agree. There's some stuff I've seen recently that makes me think that, yeah, I think they're kind of coming around.
Took the kids to school today, had Dan Patrick on first 10 minutes of the show, maybe even longer. Jazz talk. Apparently we're the Jellos.
We're the Jellos. Yeah, I actually heard that too. Man, NFL just really sells in February, doesn't it? Like they're starved for NFL content because no matter what, no matter how crazy a story the Utah Jazz is, they're talking about J.J. Watt and they're talking about Deshaun Jackson, and it's always going to be NFL. But that's just, I guess, it's the bread and butter. But yeah, I heard that. I was actually, I have some stuff later on in the show to talk about that. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. All right, we'll continue on.
When we keep downplaying things like, oh, we're just waiting for that stretch where they lose. We're just waiting for this. We're just waiting for that. I don't know. It just kind of feels like you're not all in, and truly all that you're doing is just putting your foot in the water and hoping for the best that it's not too cold. So anyway, that's my take, and it's awesome to actually see people wanting to stay in Utah, and hopefully more players like Clarkson, Favors, Conley, they've expressed how much they love it here, so maybe we'll start seeing a little bit better free agents coming this way. Who knows? But anyway, hope you guys are doing all right these days. I do miss seeing your faces in person. So take care, be safe, and you know what? If we lose, so be it. But at least we gave it our all as fans, not just the team. You see what I did there? I pretended like we're the team. See you guys.
Nate is the man. Fully vaccinated, Nate the Hemorrhoid. He is fully vaccinated.
Lucky guy.
He's got the antibodies. He can go to Jazz games if he wants. He can do whatever he wants now, man. He's ready to go. I don't know, man. I'm fully invested. I'm not dipping my toe in the water. I'm just scared of getting my heart broken again, like always. And not just with the Jazz, but with all my teams.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. He's a Boston Red Sox fan. Like, he should know this until their recent runs. Am I remembering correctly? I remember that was one of my selling points. He would know. He'd remember. The pain is there. It's not quite as bad. Well, I don't know. They traded away Babe Ruth, so it should be worse than what the Cubs fans experience, but maybe not. But I hear where he's coming from. But the thing is, it's almost unimaginable. Minus, even in, and I'm just trying to recall, even in good seasons, like really good seasons, which are 60-win seasons in the NBA in normal years, right? There's going to be a 3-4 game losing streak typically. And that's, we're not hoping it happens, but odds are, Nate, my brother. Welcome back. Thank you. Good to
I
see
know.
you
I'm
here.
so. First of all, but before you continue, so happy to have him back.
Absolutely. Odds are that is going to occur, right? And so we're not like if it doesn't, no skin off my back. I love watching dominant runs, but we're interested to see if it does happen. And also in the playoffs, I mean, they may lose a game or two in a row. So all of this, the winning at this crazy clip, whether it's via the spread and via blowout. I mean, we talked about it in our interview with Brian. Like, I would like to see some crunch time games where they pull through, and it would be helpful for me to see how and they've done it with one. At this point, we're down to the one loss. How do they rebound from one loss?
That's crazy.
And they're doing a phenomenal job, obviously. But I mean, I don't want to see it, but I imagine there's going to be a 2, maybe 3 game skid, especially in the second half when things tighten up regarding playoff seeding, and maybe the Lakers seem to care or at full strength, or the Clippers same. I want to see how they respond to that. So I'm all in, Nate. I hear where you're coming from, and if we came off that way, at least from me, I'm in. I consider him a contender, not a favorite. And I'll try to more accurately describe that in future episodes.
Yeah. And anyone who's new and listening, you might be thinking that we've been talking trash on the Jazz. Actually, very much the opposite, especially you, James, because in recent years, you've been, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but you've been more cautious about getting your hopes up too high. And this year, you really don't have anything to complain about because it's been so fantastic. And so I just want to make sure everyone knows we're on board, man. We're like super stoked. Go back and listen to last week, and you can see exactly how excited we are. Just the fan part of me just is scared. I've never won a title. None of my teams have ever won a title. So I don't know what that feeling is like, but I like Nate's optimism.
Didn't you revoke, the two of you have a secret vote against me and revoke my Jazz fandom somewhere around 2019? Have I received my card back?
You know what, James? I'm going to make an executive decision. I'm not even going to talk to Nate on this one. I'm not going to consult with him. You have officially earned your Jazz fan card back.
This moment will live on.
It
I'm
will.
marking it on the calendar. It's
doesn't mean it can't.
Event from
doesn't. I mean, you're on maybe a probationary period here.
But you couldn't even go all in. I wouldn't expect anything less. All right, Well, I better keep it straight and narrow for a little while. Got the speeding ticket. I don't want to get it. Yep, sure enough.
Exactly.
I'm on probation period.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I do admire Nate's optimism. You know who else's optimism I really admire? Brian Preece from the Home Court Press podcast joined us just a few minutes ago, and it was a great conversation, man. So let's play that now. It's Brian Preece on Dog and Deuce.
Hey, this is David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. You're listening to the Dog and the Deuce.
Joining us this week on Dog and Deuce is the man from the Home Court Press podcast, Mr. Brian Preece. Brian, before we get going, I have to know, I've been asking everybody I can find, any Jazz fans out there I can find, is this the most fun you've had watching Jazz basketball?
I'm not going to qualify it as the most fun I've had because I am 36. I remember the Stockton and Malone heyday. Spent a lot of time going to games back then, and I think that probably the most fun I've had was watching that 1997 Jazz Rockets series and Stockton hitting the shot. But this is probably a pretty close second. The run these guys are on and the joy that they play with, and you can see on their faces every night and the way they enjoy each other's they love playing together. And that is one of the most exciting things you can see as a fan. And it's fun to watch this team developing.
And James, I don't know if I've asked you this, is this the most fun you've had? Because we remember those days. You're late 30s, I'm early 40s. We remember those days too. Is this the most fun you've had?
Man, it's close. It's and it depends. I mean, what Brian just talked about is sort of postseason run. So it would be yet to be determined, at least as far as regular season. If it's not the mountain, it's on the precipice, right? And depending on how, that they make a run in the playoffs, it could overtake it for sure. I mean, I would say and especially because the future seems more to come. Whereas with Stockton Malone, that was sort of the peak, right? And we knew that. And since after that, it sort of trailed off, even though there was still success there. So in a way, it definitely could be, we'll see come May, June, and July, I guess, this year. But I'm right there, second, but definitely has the possibility of making a run, if not overtaking the glory years, so to speak.
Dude, for me, I think this is the most fun I've ever had. And it might just be because I'm enjoying it because I'm not super nervous at the end of games because usually we're up by 20, which is weird. Like I'm not used to that. I'm used to seeing like the Warriors do that and the Lakers do that and that kind of stuff. So it's weird. Are you, Brian, missing those close games, or are you totally fine with let's just blow them out as much as possible?
Hey, when we're talking regular season basketball, let's blow them out. Let's get these games over with. There are times when I wish that Quin Snyder put a little bit more emphasis on getting guys rest in the last 4, 5, 6 minutes of games. But I also have this theory that in the wide open, fast paced style of today's NBA game, that a 12-point lead is the new 7-point lead. So you're not safe at that 12, 15-point lead because it can disappear. I mean, we see with this Jazz team how fast they can go on a run and take 3 minutes and, outscore a team 20-2. So I get why Quin leaves guys in, but yeah, give me those blowouts. Let's get some rest and be prepared for the playoffs when they come.
What did you make of the game last night? No AD, no Schroeder. It's Schroeder, right? It's Schroeder. That's how you say it?
Schroeder.
I don't know. I've been saying Schroeder. But those guys aren't in. The rest of the cast of the Lakers doesn't look great. LeBron, I think they finally got him some rest, which is much needed. But how much stock are you putting in that win? Because, I mean, that wasn't just a win. That was an ass whooping. Like, they beat him down. So how much stock are you putting in that going forward?
I don't think I would put a lot of stock in that particular game going forward, but I look at it from this perspective. That was a game where the Jazz of, yesteryear, last season, they probably might be strong, but they easily could have lost that type of a game. Going in with the Lakers missing AD and the Schroeder, second in sixth man of the year last season. So 2 big pieces. And there are a lot of Jazz teams from the past that may not have taken this game as seriously and wouldn't have come out and stepped on the Lakers' throats like they did last night. And they were able to do it. What I do put stock in is how they go about doing it. We see Donovan Mitchell have a really poor night from the field. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think he finishes the game with 13 points on it's just a low shooting percentage, but he was able to do a lot more things. And that's what I'm excited about with this Jazz team, is when you've got a guy like Donovan that isn't giving you the offensive punch that he typically does, he's still able to impact the game with rebounding and passing and facilitating for other guys. Rudy Gobert is another one. He didn't get his double-double last night, but his impact on the game was just as strong as it always is. And so that's what I get excited about, is that the Jazz, just night after night, they are coming in and throwing haymakers, and they're really taking the game to their opponents every day rather than waiting for the game to come to them.
James is he's a big defensive guy in everything. Like in football, he likes the 3-0 games. And which is crazy. It's because he's a Bears fan, and that's just kind of how they buttered their bread over the years. So, James, I know you're super stoked about Rudy. And I'm going to ask this to both of you, but first, James, I'll start with you since we usually break down the games. Is there anyone else in the conversation right now for Defensive Player of the Year?
There may be, but I mean, he's won it twice. He's got a strong claim and continues to just perform. He's sort of he's one of those scenarios like where what's the saying, and it's not coming to me. You're troubled by your past success. When you've won it twice, it seems like you have to be even that more exceptional to get the third and fourth, et cetera, et cetera. But I do want to go back to one question, if I could, for a moment, if you'll give me that leave, and that is, do we like the blowouts? Look, I love them, but I do slightly worry. And I think you saw this a little bit with Golden State when they had the epic run and then lost to LeBron. Playoff games are unlikely to be that way, right? They're typically more close. And I'd like them to get a little bit of, practice, if you will, or crunch pressure crunch in winning the tight ones against good teams. Last night, I don't put a lot of leeway. It's an important game because you're up 1-0 in the head-to-head advantage. Should the Lakers close the margin, in games up in the standings, you have the head-to-head, you have the lead, and if you can finish it off, I haven't looked at the second half of the schedule. I think we play maybe 2 or 3 more times. If you win one of those, you got the 2 more. Well, thank you, Brian. 2 more, you got the head-to-head, and that could be the tiebreaker come playoff time as far as seeding, et cetera. Important in my mind. But I'd like to see some closer games and full squad games, really, so we can get a generic idea of how they measure up to the elites. I mean, we saw it with the Clippers one night. The Clippers didn't, although they gave up a good fight in the first half, second half, Jazz destroyed them, and then enter Kawhi Leonard, et cetera. Maybe officiating aside, it was a much more difficult game, and the Jazz took the loss. Defensive player of the year, for me, as a Jazz fan, you would have to do something so astronomical to overtake Rudy that for me, it's almost like de facto unless he gets hurt or just decides not to play defense, which I don't think will ever be the case. And last night, let's be honest, Schroeder, he is a Jazz killer. He's like, Rondo, younger and more athletic and a better shooter. And that, at least in previous years and iterations with Oklahoma City and other teams, he's got the number of whoever we put in front of him. So I think that as much as Anthony Davis is sort of the person that everyone says isn't missing, I think that's a very important point to remember that Schroeder, man, he gets it done when it comes to Jazz time. Versus the Jazz.
He's like JJ Barea, who just Jazz killer, man, just made, and like going back, we've talked about this all the time, but Brian Grant for the Portland Trailblazers way back used to own Karl Malone. Like there's just those guys that just have our number, and Schroeder's definitely one of them. AD, the thing about him is it's his defense too. It's his offense and his defense, and that's really. I mean, I'm kind of with you, James. Like I remember a couple years ago when the Warriors were blowing out teams like crazy. And they got into a close game. I can't remember who it was against, but they had Steve Kerr mic'd up. And in the timeout, he's like, guys, this is fun. We're not used to doing this. Like, let's go out there and let's have fun in this close game. I'd like to see the Jazz prove that they can do that. I agree with you there. I think that's a good point. We got to talk a little bit about the All-Star snub for Mike Conley. For me, it's just so there just are not enough roster spots. So I'm not really surprised that Conley didn't get it, but dude, I mean, that guy deserves it more than anybody. Brian, what do you think?
Oh, I think you make the perfect point there, Alan, and there's just not enough roster spots. Why is the All-Star roster limited to 12 guys when the regular season NBA roster is at 15? Let's bump that up a little bit. And then, we talk about Mike Conley specifically. I feel for the guy. I totally understand why Adam Silver would choose Devin Booker. I think Booker deserves the All-Star nod. The Suns, the way they're playing, deserve to have 2 All-Stars. But when we look at a guy like Mike Conley, obviously as a Jazz fan, I'm biased, but this has got to be his last best opportunity to make the All-Star team, right? I mean, last year we were talking about his transition from Memphis to Utah and how difficult it was and how he just didn't look like himself. And there was a lot of conversation as to whether Mike Conley's career had kind of passed him by and his best days were behind him. And this year I would venture so far as to say that this is probably his best all-around season of his career at 33 years old. And yeah, if he was ever going to make an All-Star team, it had to be this year. So it's tough to see Adam Silver giving that nod to Devin Booker, even though I really can't argue with it logically.
Yeah, I know. It's hard because I do feel for the guy. I do. And plus, I really hate seeing Suns fans get vindication. Like, it just drives me crazy. Like, the worst fans in the league right now, I swear. I don't know, James. I think we were kind of on the same page thinking that Conley probably wouldn't get it. But, I mean, what were your thoughts as soon as you heard?
Yeah, unfortunately, not surprised, right? It is sort of ironic and not really lost on me, though, that, the All-Star game, especially, I mean, in all sports, but especially in the NBA, it's difficult when you don't have that legacy set in, I mean, Like there were a few times where, and I'm not denying Carmelo Anthony, hell of a ball player, Hall of Famer, no doubt. But there were a few of the years, at the end there, where it was like, really, like, come on, he's in there because he's Carmelo Anthony, not because he's having an all-star caliber year. And it does really speak to something about that, right? That if you have name recognition and you make it a few times, and I think although Donovan and Rudy are completely deserve it this year, they're starting to be part of that group of players who, even in the future, will continue to get all-star appearances based on previous years, not necessarily that particular season. Unfortunately for Mike Conley, he's the victim of that right now. And you're right, Brian. I mean, this was his most likely his best shot. If I don't know if his trajectories going to keep going higher and higher as he ages, and it's terribly unfortunate. I was sort of hoping for like a career achievement nomination here. I mean, 14 years in the league, at one time the highest paid player in the NBA, right? Back in the day with Memphis when he signed, I think it was like 130 million. It sucks. But I think on the bright side, if you're a Jazz fan, look at it this way. He has had some hamstring injuries, right? They've played a lot of games in a short stretch because of the bubble last year and how quickly they turn around the season. Maybe rest is the best medicine, and sort of the fire in the belly getting logs added to it, and we see the best of Mike Conley in the second half in playoffs.
Brian Preece from the Home Court Podcast is joining us to talk a little Jazz basketball. Dude, you broke out that hat. For those listening on the podcast, you can't see, but he just pulled out the sickest Jazz hat I've seen in a while. It's got the pink Jazz note logo, pink brim. I love it, man. And the gray hat. I love it. Where'd you get that?
I was at the game last night. It was the first time I've been in the arena for a game. I work at the Zone, so I'm in arena pretty often, but first time I've been at a game. I picked this one up at the team store, and it's funny that you give it so much praise. My wife saw it on me. I bought it and then went back to the seats, and she was like, why? I would have never chosen that hat for you. I don't understand. And she brought it up 2 or 3 times throughout the game. I'm like, what? I love pink. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Birdcage, but there's a scene in that film where I can't remember the actor's name, but he is trying to dress up and wear a suit and act like a man. He's typically a cross-dresser, and he puts one leg up, crosses his legs, and shows some like purple socks or something like that. And the line, he's like, what? One does want a hint of color. And that's how I look at my hat selection. So I thought I'd throw this one on there, and thanks for pointing it out.
Dude, I like it. I like it a lot. I saw that. I'm like, man, I gotta get one of those. I love that. Last couple of weeks on this show, we've been really kind of geeking out over Quin Snyder, and I know it's not real fair to try and ask you to pinpoint one element of this team that's really kind of made it click. But so I'll ask you this: how much stock are you putting in? How much of an effect is Quin Snyder on this team and what they've been able to do this year? Because we got the talent, obviously. But what's Quin Snyder's role in putting together the successful string?
I think Quin Snyder is one of the best, if not the best coach in basketball. I fully expect him, if the Jazz continue even close to this pace, Quin Snyder is going to get the Coach of the Year honor, and it'll be fully deserved. Something that Jerry Sloan missed out on for years and years and years. Finally get that for the Jazz. And one thing that I love about Quin Snyder, and that always stands out to me so much, is the level of detail that he puts into game planning. When you look at the regular season, a lot of teams don't do very much game-to-game game planning. You might get a walkthrough occasionally, maybe once a week before a game. So besides watching some video and handing out the scouting report, you don't get the detailed game planning. But the Jazz do that. They game plan and they adjust their style. They pretty much play. They are who they are offensively, and they work to get in transition and shoot threes. But defensively, they play different styles depending on who their opponent is night after night. And we saw how they defend the Milwaukee Bucks. And last year they would put Rudy Gobert out on the perimeter on Giannis. And then this year they're switching that up and putting Royce on him. But they're just, I kind of digress a little bit. I think that the biggest thing that Quin has to do with this team is just that he's so detail oriented. He's so focused. And on our podcast, Home Court Press, I mentioned a few weeks ago how one of the things that stands out to me, and I think it's a coaching aspect, is how Rudy and Favors will get offensive rebounds and they'll have their back to the perimeter, but it's almost instinctively, like they know where their teammates are going to be. And you'll see 2-3 times a game, typically, they'll get the offensive rebound and immediately kick it out to a wide open 3-point shooter. And I think that that's the type of thing that's actually coached in. It's not a coincidence. It's Quin saying, all right, when a shot goes up from the right corner, then I want our guys on the perimeter to rotate to A, B, and C positions on the floor in case of an offensive rebound. And that's just a level of detail that few, if any, other teams in the league get into.
You know what that is? That's 4-hour practices. That's the thing that Trey Lyles could not stand with the Utah Jazz. That's work ethic. It's and there's so much going on with Quin Snyder, and I don't want to rehash it because we talked about it last week. But James, you and I were talking about how his willingness to let Jordan Clarkson just be Jordan Clarkson. And James, I think you brought up the point. I thought it was an excellent point that now Clarkson is going out there and he's getting buckets when we need it. When we go cold, Clarkson's the spark plug. He's the one going out there and getting the buckets, but he's also very, very unselfish, which is crazy when you see how many times he shoots and the way he plays. So I know for us, Quin Snyder's just been huge. I mean, James, we talked about it last week, but maybe you can comment again on his role in putting this team together and getting everyone back on the court together again.
I mean, excuse me, I think it's important to think about, given the success and his sort of, let's be honest, last year, Jazz Nation, and I would imagine somewhat even in the upper echelons of the franchise, how the Donovan, Rudy saga, and I'm not going to revisit that, was seeming to play out, and, bringing it back together and maybe even stronger. And then the development of Jordan Clarkson, Bogdanovich, et cetera, even Ingles at times, I think has really hit his peak with Snyder. It will allow the Jazz, if they keep at least Donovan and hopefully Donovan and Rudy together, to become not an LA, not a New York, not a Boston, or a Miami. I'm not going that far, but it will give maybe not even the top tier, but the next tier of free agents a second thought on whether or not Utah is a viable option. If they're willing to meet at least the money wise, in previous years. And you sort of saw that at times in San Antonio. The key other pieces that make a franchise successful over long runs, I think he's played a role in putting this team together, or at least coaching the team as it's put together. And then the development of other players and the recognition they're getting will only increase and add to the Jazz ability to be successful long term. It's significant. One thing I want to say is how you see those, and maybe this is just a TV thing, or a movie thing, where you saw like people putting on and like then they're reading their brain. I would pay every cent in my account to have one of those go on Quin during a game, because his level of intensity, I just want to see the synapses just firing. It's just, I can only imagine the level of relaxation at the end of the fourth quarter for his brain and body, because there's not a minute where it doesn't seem his intensity level is through the roof.
Yeah, dude, it's true. No matter what's going on, whether he is, feeling joy after a playoff victory or just frustration on the bench, like you kind of feel like he's a fan who is like, you can relate to him, is what I'm saying. He's not like a Brad Stevens where fans just, I think in Boston, can't relate to him at all. But Quin, it feels like we're in this together and he's one of us, but he's also very much in control. Thank God, like it's a little bit of relief there, if that makes any sense. We only got a few games left before the All-Star break, man. I mean, we're going, let's see, next 4, Miami. So the next 4 are all away. It's Miami, Orlando, New Orleans, and Philly, and then we'll break for the All-Star game. So, Brian, in the next couple, these are very winnable games. Philly, maybe not so much. We'll see if Embiid is going to chicken out against playing against Rudy again. We'll see. But if they're full strength, that might be the only challenge. What do you see playing out in the Final Four?
Well, I look at Miami and Orlando, and we've already seen the Jazz take on Miami, and they dominated them here at home, just a couple weeks ago. And the Heat have been getting things together a little bit, but I think the Jazz just match up really well with them, and they should be able to get the 3-point shots. Orlando is basically a dumpster fire. Unless we're only talking about Nikola Vucevic. He's been fantastic this year, an all-star in the East, but otherwise it's been really tough in Orlando. How many players do they have on the shelf right now with ACL tears? They've got Markelle Fultz. Is Mo Bamba even playing? I don't know. Orlando's a mess right now. New Orleans has been playing a lot better lately, and Zion definitely appears to have figured things out offensively. He's still kind of a mess defensively. So I look at these next 4 games. I think Philadelphia is probably the toughest test, and they're always really good at home. Last year, I think they only lost 2 or 3 games at home all season. So that's going to be a big one for the Jazz. We'll see if Joel Embiid wants to play Rudy Gobert in that one. But I see the way the Jazz match up with teams this year, and I just don't think there's a team in the league that the Jazz can't beat by 20. And they've looked really tired over the last couple weeks, but they seemed refreshed last night against the Lakers. They appeared to be a different type of a squad. I think having Mike Conley return from injury and allowing Joe to take a step back in his role and go back to 26 or 27 minutes a game really helps. So over these next 4 games, I would predict pretty confidently, I think the Jazz probably go at least 3-1 and go into the All-Star break. They're almost assured, even if they lose all 4 of these, I think they're guaranteed to still be the number 1 seed in the West going into the All-Star break. And that's one thing that I think is really important for this Jazz team. It's a lot more important to be the 1 seed for the Jazz than it is for a team like the Lakers or even the Clippers, because those teams are confident. They have the experience of playing deep into the playoffs and winning championships. Even the Clippers haven't won championships together, but they have guys on that roster that have a lot of playoff experience and 2 seasons together. So the 1 seed is incredibly important for this Jazz team, just in terms of confidence, but also positioning themselves to have as easy of a road as possible once we get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. There've been lots of people trying to compare, trying to figure this team out and compare, like they look like the Warriors, or they look like the Spurs, or the 60-win Hawks team. Is there a team out there that jumps out at you that you would most compare the Jazz to?
It's funny you ask. So my co-host and I, McCade, we are planning a series of shows where we're going to have beat writers or people that have covered some of the teams that have been talked about in comparison with the Jazz. So the 2014-15 Warriors, the 2017-18 Rockets, the 13-14 Spurs. We're looking at the 2011 Mavericks team. But I look at it, I think there's a combination. There are 2 teams that really stand out to me that I think the Jazz most closely resemble. I look at the 03-04 Pistons that won the title and beat the Lakers, Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. And that was just a collection of good players, not a lot of great players on that team. There might be a Hall of Famer in there. Maybe Ben Wallace makes it, but that might even be a stretch. And so that 03-04 team, just with the makeup of the Jazz, not having one focused star game after game, and the 2009 Orlando Magic and the way that they played offensively with Dwight Howard in the paint and controlling things there. And then they played 4 guys out, and they had Rashard Lewis and Jameer Nelson and Hedo Turkoglu. I think those 2 teams are probably not talked about enough in terms of how similar they are to this Jazz team. Obviously, the game is a little bit different. The Jazz are shooting far more threes than either of those teams did. But I think when you compare the way Orlando played with the rest of the league in 2009 and the way the Jazz are playing compared to the rest of the league this year, it's pretty similar.
Brian Preece, Home Court Press Podcast. Tell us a little bit about your show and where we can find it.
So Home Court Press, you can find it on any of the major podcatchers. It's myself and my co-host, McCade Pearson. And we like to fancy ourselves as just a step down from David Locke in terms of the analytics. We do focus a lot on the numbers, but it's not quite as, math intensive as listening to David Locke is. It's also not quite as much coffee for McCade and I as Locke likes to use. But yeah, so I use the eye test situation. McCade is a math major, and we look at a lot of numbers. We do recaps for almost every game, and then we also have a weekly show where we look around the league and do a little bit more wide-ranging topic. This last week, we talked All-Stars and named our All-Star reserves before the NBA named those. And so it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy putting the show out there. And I want to say thank you to you guys for bringing me on and allowing me to talk Jazz with you. I actually had one question for you guys, if I could.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the Jazz title hopes this season? Obviously, they look great right now, but it's still the regular season and it's still early. Like, do you guys believe that this is legitimately a title contender, or is it a type of team that once you get into the playoffs and you run into a buzzsaw like the Lakers over the course of 7 games, can the Jazz beat those type of teams to win a championship?
James, I'm going to let you take that first because I need to.
You're taking it first. You take it first, and I'll follow up.
Okay. Here's my problem is I'm too much of a fan, like lifelong Jazz fan. And we talk about this all the time, how we've just over the years had our hearts ripped out in so many different ways. We're also University of Utah football fans, so we've had our hearts ripped out there too. And pretty much every team I've ever loved has had some amazing run, and then just my hopes get dashed. So I'm at the point now where I'm having a really hard time. I can watch the games and analyze them, but I'm having a hard time separating my fandom from what I'm seeing, because everything I'm seeing, I'm thinking, yeah, like I don't see why they couldn't. But I know that it's a different beast in the playoffs. I know when you get to the Lakers and LeBron James, I mean, he's been a part of how many NBA finals? It's ridiculous. That guy knows how to win in the postseason, and he could do it alone. Even if they didn't have AD or Schroeder, I think he would find a way to make them competitive, if not win in a 7-game series, just because, I mean, look at with Cleveland. He was, he left Cleveland and then became the worst team in the league. And then he comes back and they're in the NBA finals. One guy can do that. So, I kind of go back and forth. I don't see analytically why we couldn't. And I'm not a numbers guy. And you mentioned you guys are a step down from David Locke in regards to stats. Well, that's still like 10 steps above everybody else, because he is like at such a high. I mean, I listen to Locked On Jazz and sometimes I get so lost in the numbers, I don't know what I'm saying. And that's why I like your show, because when you guys dive into the numbers, I can follow you, and I can relate, and it helps me make sense of the game a little bit more. Anyway, so now I'm digressing. My point is, I think they can. I just don't dare hope, I guess I should say. Now, James, I'm going to pass it off to you, and maybe you'll have a clear message.
I would say yes, contender, but contender means a lot of things, right? And a lot of things have to break right for them in order to follow through and become champion. I mean, they're definitely in the mix, and I think you hit on the one, and we had mentioned it before. The number 1 seed is crucial, and not just from a confidence standpoint, although I think in some ways that may be the most important, because where they're positioned right now for them, unless the Lakers and Clippers, and I think they're sort of playing the middle game, get through. We know we can go on the road. probably swipe one or two if we absolutely have to in a 7-game set, and win most series against most of the teams. So I think the 1 seed's important. Depends also, the reports that vaccines are going to be out there and prolific, and by the end of June, 100% of the population could be theoretically vaccinated. So if Vivint somehow comes to life, in a reincarnation, or whatever the word is of what we know it to be, that's even more important to have the number 1 seed.
Yeah, but does that scare LeBron though? Because he's seen every arena at their loudest.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't scare him. Nothing really scares LeBron, but it helps the Jazz, right? It's not necessarily about what it will do to the elite players like LeBron or Kawhi. It's what it will give to the Jazz, I think, more than anything. It's comfort, it's loudness, and let's not forget, we don't know. I mean, these guys haven't played in front of packed houses for 18 months. It may take a readjustment period, I would think. I don't know. I'm not an NBA player, but going from 1,000 or 4,000, whatever they allow at Vivint, to 32 something or something like that, is different. And it can be louder, and playing a whole season like that and then suddenly having that thrust upon you, I think it can make a difference. How much, I don't know. But I think the continued success, yes, contender for sure. But, I mean, we saw it last year, up 3-1 on Denver, unable to seal the deal. There's still question marks. And the only way those questions get answered is by doing it. Capable, the opportunity's there, and they still have the ability to write the story. So I think they're definitely contenders, not favorites, but contenders. Yes.
And now, Brian, I'm going to throw it back at you. You're kind of the tiebreaker here. What do you think? Do you think that they have what it takes, that they can do it against a 7-game series against the Clippers or Lakers?
From night to night, watching this Jazz team, there's nothing that they're doing on the floor that I don't think isn't replicable. I think that their shooting percentages, I think that the way that they play, I think the way they trying to think of how to word this, just the team game that they play and the way they're not reliant on just one guy to go out, score 25 or 30 points a night. Everything tells me that this team is capable of going out there and being the best team in the league and knocking off some of the best teams in the league. And I'm personally of the belief that once you get into the playoffs, you get past that first round and you're one of the last 8 teams left in basketball. At that point, it's pretty much anybody's game. And it's just, a lot of times it's the bounce of the ball. And I think the Jazz have put themselves in a great position to be able to get the right bounces once they get into the playoffs. I think that they can, with Quin Snyder's ability to scheme opponents out of the game and use Rudy Gobert defensively and then offensively with how many weapons the Jazz have. It's going to be really difficult for any team to be able to stop the Jazz or limit them 4 games out of 7. So I think that they have a really good chance. And full disclosure here, I'm a Cubs fan. So for years and years and years, my entire life, I was just used to getting my heart broken between the Cubs and the Jazz. And so 2016 with the Cubs winning the World Series taught me a lot that it's okay sometimes to speak a championship into existence. So that's one of the things that McCade and I are working on the podcast is we are all in on this. And yeah, it's a little bit of homerism, but I do think logically that if I was just to analyze the NBA and the Jazz, I think this is a team that can win the title and has the pieces necessary to do that. I do think it's going to be interesting over the next couple of weeks to see what they do on the margins of the roster after cutting Shaq Harrison. They've got 2 open roster spots right now. So we'll see if they're going to pursue a defensive wing or if there's even anybody available that could fit that type of a role. But the Jazz, as currently constituted right now, barring any injury or illness, I think they are absolutely a championship contender, and I'd put them right there with the Lakers, the Clippers, another team we haven't mentioned at all, the Brooklyn Nets and their collection of talent. I think the Jazz are right there with all of those teams.
I like your outlook. I'm going to go with you, man. I'm just going to listen to you. Anytime my doubts creep up, I'm going to play this episode and I'm going to put on your podcast. And I'm going to say, okay, we got this. James is a fellow Cubs fan. So I remember we recorded that night after they won it. And it was almost like you couldn't believe it, James. It was just like the look on your face was just like, wow. Like it almost didn't sink in is what it felt like to me. So you're in good company there. Brian Preece, Home Court Press podcast. We will have all the links to get in touch with Brian, including Twitter and social media and where you can find the podcast over at our website, doganddeuce.com. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you guys. It's been a pleasure. This was a lot of fun.
We'll get you on again too, because the way like I said, and I told you this off mic, but I really enjoy what you guys are doing on your show. It makes me. I am not a numbers guy, so when you can actually make me understand the numbers, then you're doing something right, because I'm not real good with that. So thank you for what you're doing. Check it out, Home Court Press podcast. We'll be right back.
G'day folks, this is Tom Hackett. You're listening to Dog and Deuce.
Sweet. That was a great conversation with Brian. Really enjoyed having him on the show. We're going to get him back because he knows the stuff, man. We'll have to get his co-host McCade on too, because he definitely dives into the numbers. And that's not one of my strengths. You're a little bit better at that, but I'm not real great with the numbers. So I'm more of an eyeball test guy.
Yeah, my numbers, I mean, anyone who does numbers, mine are just reading. That's all I do. There's no math calculations on my end. If you're looking for that, probably not going to find it. But Brian McCade, great podcast, great guys. And that interview, I mean, it hit on some important things. I think Nate, that, Brian and McCade's optimism will resonate with Nate. So at least we've provided that to our dear friend, the Hemorrhoid, this afternoon.
Yeah, and I look forward to the time when we're all vaccinated and COVID's behind us, and we get them in the studio and actually record face to face. Remember those days back in the day? So real quick, we only have about 5 minutes left, so we might go long if that's cool with you, James.
Of course.
All right. So if we'll get there if we need to, but I have a couple gripes real quick, and then we'll jump in. And if you don't want to hear me griping about the media, I understand. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, we actually have time codes down in the description, and you can just click to the next topic and just skip it altogether. So I know it's not for everybody, but man, like I've been sick lately. I got my COVID test. It's in the mail, so we'll see. I don't think I have COVID, but I've been sick, and so I've been kind of cooped up even more than usual, and I've been in kind of a bad mood. And I got up this morning, got up super early, fire up Twitter, and I'm just seeing like national media just coming at the Jazz, and it's kind of pissing me off. I'm usually not, like when I was younger, back in the Stockton and Malone days, I got a little bit more riled up about it, but now I don't really care when we don't get coverage. That doesn't bother me. I understand we're a small market team. I've been a fan long enough to know that that's just how it is. The big market teams are always going to draw the headlines, and rightfully so to an extent. But it bothers me when I see stuff like Skip Bayless saying that the Jazz are overrated. And what that means, and I fired off some mean tweets this morning, so I'm sorry to everybody who had to put up with me. What that means is that Skip Bayless is not watching, he's not doing his job. He's not watching basketball. Because there is no way you can watch the Jazz play and think overrated. There's no way. And we've talked about how sometimes we can be critical. In the past, we've been critical of the Jazz and our teams, but you can't watch them. I mean, if you want to say, okay, they have, if they holes in the games here and there, holes in their game here and there, maybe I can follow you. But to say they're overrated just shows you're just not watching them play, man. And so I saw Skip Bayless tweet that before the game last night. And then I fire off my little mean-spirited tweet. And then I see the rest of the tweets that he was firing off last night. And I realized he wasn't saying the Jazz were overrated because he thinks the Jazz are overrated. He was saying the Jazz were overrated as a way to stick it to LeBron. And I was like, okay, I see. This isn't about the Jazz. This is about LeBron. But then I'm also seeing like some other guy, some other jabroni, and I don't even know what organization, I've never heard of the organization he's with, is saying that he can't believe how well the national media is treating the Jazz and how he's surprised that we're getting so much better treatment than other teams who have been in this situation in the past. Do you think that's true? Have you seen that?
Hell no. I mean,
Right?
Look at the way they treated the Milwaukee Bucks last year.
Right.
Didn't the Bucks go out in the first round?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of last year's, and they were the number one.
Or wait, no, they
overall
may
seed.
have got past the first round, but it was sketchy. And they went out. I can't remember. It doesn't
maybe.
matter.
They went out early for having the best record in the league, right? I mean, and look, Skip Bayless, ultimate troller. Like
I know, and I bought into it.
Master of the trolls is what his job title should be. I don't know that. I mean, he's definitely, at least, I don't know. I don't know if he works for the Fort Worth Telegram. I know he used to work for the Mercury News. I don't even know if he writes anymore. But Troll Master is his job on whatever his show name is. And it's LeBron is numero uno on his list of trolls. So you're right in that context. And I hesitate to even defend such an absurd human and point of view. But I think he might be saying, like, look, this is awesome, right? They're the number one seed. And look, you can never give, in my estimation, and the Bucks got it last year. And unless it's a foregone conclusion, i.e., the Heat back in the day, or, the Warriors at full strength, where expected, producing, kicking everyone's ass, number one seed. If it's someone coming up, they're going to get news because they should. When the Bucks run over the last few years, they've gotten press because they should. While maybe not completely unexpected, it is a news story and significant. And that's what reporters do. Report on news, meaning it is new. And so the Bucks being the number one seed is new and newsworthy. The Jazz destroying everyone and being the number one seed is news and new and newsworthy. Okay?
Imagine
Let's get that out of there. It's something that they should be talking about. And I think that, look, I don't take it as offensive as a lot of people here. Like,
real quick before you do that, we're out of time on the TV show. So if you are if you're watching on Cape Hatter TV or if you're watching on Backcountry TV, head over to doganddeuce.com. You can hear the rest of the conversation, or head over to youtube.com/DD on sports, and you can watch the rest of the show. Again, there's time codes, so you can actually skip around. Just click a mouse, and it'll take you right to where you need to be. All right, sorry, man. Go ahead.
You're good. No, we'll see you over there on YouTube. Check it out. And I feel like, there's always, I feel like when a smaller market team makes these kind of runs, a little bit of hesitation. But the Jazz have overcome that because they've been consistently kicking everyone's ass, to put it plainly, right? And so now they're getting the press that they deserve. So I feel like it's been on par with how I want, not overreaction when they start the season on fire, but then consistent throughout the beginning of the first half of the year. I feel like it's been commensurate with the way the Jazz have been playing.
I agree. And I, you know what? I should probably look up who this is so I'm not just speaking out into the void about nobody in particular. But so it's Hardwood Paroxysm, and it's at HP Basketball. I don't even know. What's Action Network HQ? Do you know what that is?
I don't.
Never heard of it.
But I'll find out after the show. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's who this person writes for. Matt Moore, I guess. He's an NBA writer. Are we forgetting when the Golden State Warriors were coming up for the first time? The media acted like they were a gift from above. And then Rockets too. The Rockets never even won a title, but every single year everyone was acting like they're just the best ever, when they had the number one seed and when they were tearing through everybody. And so I don't agree with this. The national media is treating the Jazz way better than any other team in this situation. If you want to make the argument that Denver has been disrespected in the past couple of years when they were the number one seed, that's fine. What the Jazz are doing to teams, the Nuggets never did. They weren't beating every team by 20 points. They weren't I don't even know what the record is against the spread now. It's like 22-2 or something like that, or 23-2 over the last 25 against the spread, dude. Like we talked about this last week. You don't beat Vegas like that. No one does. And I'm not going to lie.
We had a lot of cheddar, man.
Seriously. Last night, I'm not going to lie. When I saw the Jazz were favored by 9, I was like, ooh, I don't think the Jazz are going to get this one. And I was like, man, do I try and find somewhere online to make a bet? But I don't want to bet against the Jazz. And I was wrong, dude. No, they blew that line apart. What they're doing right now, I mean, the fact that more people aren't absolutely on board with what the Jazz are doing is the shocking thing. That's what's surprising. So this jabroni, Matt Moore, I don't know what he's talking about. To me, it's insane. Yeah,
and I mean, look, I hope he, listens to this and fire back 801-47 Sport, Matt Moore. I feel it's due at this point in the year. Again, if it was game 10, I get it. Okay. But we're approaching the All-Star break. And if they flounder in the playoffs, he can say, I told you so. But this is specifically about the run they're on. And it's unprecedented.
It is.
Not Golden State Warriors didn't have this run. Unprecedented, never been done before. That is newsworthy. Whether you like it or not, whether you only want the big market teams to be talked about and not the small market, when something is unprecedented, typically people take notice. That's the end of the story for me. And if you have a problem with that, I'm not sure why you're doing news.
To me, look, here's the thing. A lot of people don't like the Jazz. And this goes back to the John and Carl days when everyone thought they were dirty. And now a lot of people don't like Jazz fans. I kind of understand where they're coming from. And I'm a Jazz fan, so don't kill me. I'm a Jazz fan, but I kind of understand where they're coming from. A lot of people are upset with Rudy. And this is another thing that pissed me off. Some guy was so mad. He hates Rudy Gobert because Rudy ruined the season last year. But let me tell you something. The NBA was going to shut down. Rudy just gave it a jump start by like a couple days. That's all that happened.
He may have saved the season.
He may have saved the season. Like what he did, no Jazz fan out there is like, Rudy did nothing wrong. We all know he screwed up. He did something that was terrible, and he never should have done it. He knows that too, and he's apologized for that. What more do you want from the guy? But people are still like, they act like he took away all our freedoms in America. No, he did something dumb. People got COVID and the league shut down, rightfully so. It was going to shut down regardless of Rudy Gobert.
I often wonder in those moments, and I saw that guy. I did see that Twitter exchange. And maybe I saw someone respond to him as like, Rudy Gobert may have been the first COVID jerk and has apologized for it, but he definitely wasn't the last. I hope you're consistent in your criticism of COVID jerks, because I don't see a whole lot of those people apologizing currently.
Right.
Like, what do I know?
Right. If Donovan Mitchell,
nice take.
If Donovan Mitchell can get past it and get along with Rudy Gobert, then Joe Blow on Twitter can too. And these NBA writers can too. So I think that's where a lot of it stems. I think a lot of people just don't like the Jazz. And that's whatever. That's fine. There are a lot of players I don't like as well, but I would never sit there and try. When I was younger, yes, when I was younger and dumber, but now you have to show respect when respect is due. And if you're unable to do that, that really kind of indicates the kind of person and the kind of analyst that you are. So to me, that it just, I'm sorry, it just irked me. It really irked me. And I've been pretty mean on Twitter, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to get better. I promise to do better. God,
we could all do better. You're on your way. First step is admitting
it's true.
You have a problem.
It's true.
So we've established that, and now we will see.
Going to be better, I promise. Okay, let's get the Jazz talk out of the way. Donovan Mitchell's going to be in the 3-point contest. How do you feel about that?
Exciting. Interesting. I was trying to find who he's going up against, and either Google's not working or I'm a terrible searcher. Has anyone, and I've been trying to think back, who would even be in the conversation? I don't think there has been anyone who's won the 3-point and dunk contest. That'd be a feather in his cap if he could somehow pull that off. It'll be interesting to see, how it translates, I should say, to a contest scenario from what he's been doing on the floor. There's some cases where people have come out and won it and not had a good second half. So I'm hoping that doesn't occur.
True.
But man, if he could, bookend his dunk win with his second All-Star appearance with a 3-point, raise that ball, that'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool. and I don't think they've officially announced who's going to be in it yet. I think Donovan may have jumped the gun by saying that. I'm just, even on this team, I'm not sure Donovan's the guy I would choose as the best 3-point shooter, you know? Like, to me, and I talk to Jess about this all the time when we're watching games. When he's wide open, he's far less accurate just from the eyeball test. Stat nerds might kill me on that one. But when he's actually well guarded, it seems like that's when he's really hitting the threes. So I don't know. We'll see, man. But I mean, George Niang, Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson. We know Joe Ingles isn't ever going to do it because
Joe would be the one.
He would be the one.
Perfect shot. It's like, and I'm only making this comparison in the sense that Larry Joe Bird did not jump high to shoot. You don't want someone who has an actual jump shot in the 3-point contest. You want less of a jump shooter and more of a set shooter who can grab, set. That's his motto. Joe, I would probably pick Joe if he were in it. That would be awesome. Yep. We know he's not going to be, and we don't even know the competition, but Joe, and then I'd say Joe would be my pick if I had to pick someone from the Jazz.
Yeah, I think he said on one of those big podcasts, I can't remember whose it was. I think he said that he wasn't going to do it because they didn't ask him when he deserved it. So he'll never do it now. Like, I just love Joe, man. You can't, if you're a Jazz fan, you can't not love him. The guy's awesome. So, I mean, and I'm happy Donovan's in it. Don't get me wrong, but and I know you need the stars in these things because like the dunk contest and the skills challenge, 3-point contest, they don't usually have a whole lot of stars. So I know they got to give the nod to those guys. But I think Mike Conley, man, give at least a consolation prize or something. Give him in the 3-point contest. It's kind of stupid that they don't.
He does have the horse championship. Let's not forget.
That's right.
Mike Conley is the de facto horse master of the NBA.
That's right. Earned every penny of that massive contract he got a couple years ago just with that. Okay, let's move on to the final topic, and that is obviously Tiger Woods and what happened to him. Thank God he's okay. That's the important thing. I don't really have a whole lot more to say other than that. I mean, the car was destroyed. I mean, Tiger's been through a lot. Some by his own doing, some not by his own doing, but he's been through a lot. And I just thank God no one else was in the car with him when it happened. Thank God he's okay. We'll see what happens. I mean, who cares about golf? Let's just, when a national figure like that has something that traumatic happen. I mean, honestly, the big worry was like, oh God, is this Kobe part 2? That's what it felt like.
Yeah, man. If I was, and this is hard to say because LA is the mecca of a lot of things, television mainly. And given now that obviously to a lesser degree than Kobe Bryant, Tiger finds himself in a precarious situation with his health, right? And you're right. I mean, it's weird to me. My first thought, literally, I saw it. I turned on the news because it was early in the morning, and I'm a pretty big news junkie. So that's like the first place I go. Drop the kids off, grab my coffee. Let's see what tomfoolery is going on in the world. And unfortunately, even no matter what network you hit, just pure news or sports, Tiger was the front story. And I'm sure a lot of people, given his past, transgressions, we're assuming that, assuming what that I'm indicating. And thankfully it appears that is not the case and that he is well. He's alive and he can live, if the medical reports that I'm reading and seeing are coming out, a fairly normal life. Golf is so far removed from my, analysis of the situation. It doesn't even, he's a dad to 2 kids, right? I mean, and that's really where my mind goes. Also being a dad to 2 kids is, dang, his daughter and son could have lost their father at 7 o'clock in the morning doing his job. So that's where my mind went. And I'm glad that he's going to be all right. I grew up playing a lot of golf, as you're well aware, and Tiger Woods, it took me a long time to sort of, because my favorite golfer ever is Fred Couples. And when Tiger came on, I thought he might have taken a few opportunities away from Boom Boom. And so I had and it sounds weird, but if you're way into golf, you understand, I was like, man, you're taking it away from Freddie. But they're great friends. And the more Tiger progressed, the more I appreciated what he did for the game. I mean, no one has grown that sport to the degree Tiger Woods has, and I'm not sure ever will. Whether it's just worldwide, down the line to, minorities being willing to step on a course and tee it up. That can never be overstated. And anyone who's ever picked up a club, white, black, or anything, should be grateful, because when the game's bigger, the game's better. So from that context, in the golf relation, we should always be grateful. Having said that, I think this assures I've lost a $100 bet. I had a recent bet with someone that he would overtake Jack Nicklaus, even though he was struggling. And I'm pretty sure now I'm going to have to pay my dues on that one. But I'm just glad that he's alive and will be able to be a father to those two kids.
Yeah.
And continue to grow.
It was really scary, especially seeing the video and the photos of the car. Awful. Very scary. I'm glad he's okay. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think it's a testament. Look, you mentioned the car, and I'm not sure if a lesser man who doesn't have Tiger's insane workout regimen survives that.
Agreed.
I mean, so maybe some of the things that hindered him, at least injury-wise, in his golf career, saved his life. And for that, we can all be grateful, I think.
Yeah. So end on a positive note, because that is good news that he's doing better, and he successfully came out of surgery and he's awake and good to go. So he'll be there for his kids, and that's the important thing. It's all that matters, man. It's all that matters.
Really?
Okay. Is there anything else we missed? It was a long show.
Go Jazz.
Go Jazz.
Go Jazz.
Go Jazz, man. Always, please go Jazz. I want them to win the title so bad. So bad. I could just taste it, but I just can't handle the heartbreak. The fall from up that high is pretty painful. So that's going to do it for episode 358 of Dog and Deuce. Thank you for joining us, everyone who is new. You can find us anywhere, man. We are every single podcatcher. YouTube, man. YouTube's actually been doing pretty good for us lately. So head over to youtube.com/DDonSports. But again, all the links over at doganddeuce.com. We will be back next week, and we certainly hope you are as well. And until then, let us know what you think of the show. Send us an email to doganddeuce@gmail.com. I'm Dog.
And I'm Deuce.
And we will see you next week.
Thanks for making us a part of this crazy life.
That's a good one.